Hello everyone. This presentation will be on Adolescent Pediatrics. It's an important subspecialty which is developing to cater to the need of adolescents. The need and requirements of adolescents are different from those of childhood. Now, adolescence is a time period which is a transition between childhood and adulthood, and the needs and requirements are different. The presentation deals with the headings of definition, pubertal changes, sexual maturity rating, stages of adolescence, and the factors affecting adolescent development. Before beginning the presentation per se, I thank the Indian Academy of Pediatricians for making these slides available. It was devised in 2015 for the purpose of continuing this education. Because it is available, I am able to use these slides to explain this concept as it is. With that introduction, coming to the definition, it's that period of life where the individual recognizes that society no longer sees him or her as a child, but at the same time not yet as an adult. Like I mentioned, it is a transitional period, and during this transitional period, you can define it by various age groups. The UN and WHO have jointly defined adolescence as a time between 10 to 19 years of age. It is important to keep this in mind, and at the same time, they have gone on to define youth as 15 to 24 and young people as 10 to 24 years of age. So, by definition, the age group of adolescence is from 10 to 19 years, and if you see the origin of the word, it comes from the Latin word adolescere, which means to grow. So, adolescence is nothing but the growing period of life. Now, the WHO further goes on to describe adolescence as a phase in which there is progression from the appearance of secondary sexual characters to reproductive maturity, the development of an adult mental processing and identity, and as well as a transition from total socioeconomic dependence to relatively independent state. Now, the progression through puberty is predictable, and the variations which are seen are in the onset of puberty in different individuals, the timing, the tempo, as well as the magnitude of changes. Now, all of these collectively are different points which are used to assess the onset of puberty. All of these vary from individual to individual. No two individuals grow at the same rate or in the same manner. Now, if you come to the physical changes which are seen in puberty, the major changes are seen in the genital system with the onset of primary as well as secondary sexual characteristics. It is important to remember that the final height gain is 25%. So, this 25% final height gain is where mainly distal growth is preceded by proximal growth by 3 to 4 months, is one thing to keep in mind. The second thing is 50% gain of the body weight is also seen. So, apart from 25% gain of height, there is a 50% gain in body weight. And in many cases, there is a doubling of the weight of the major organs, and CNS system will also mature without an increase in the cell size. Apart from which, there is also increased skeletal maturity and also maturation of the facial bones and decrease in lymphoid tissue. Now, the exact triggers of puberty is controversial, but it is believed to be of a genetic as well as an environmental influence, wherein stress, exercise, climate, and nutrition all play different roles. The theories which are believed are a critical body weight, a body fat to total body weight ratio, adrenal maturation, and CNS maturation as well as triggers for puberty. Now, hormonal changes vary between males and females. In general, there is an increase in gonadotropins, an increase in sex hormones, increase in the production of adrenal gland steroids, as well as growth hormone and insulin-like growth factors. The thyroid hormone production remains more or less constant, and a variation in this will alter the onset and rate of puberty. If you come to normal puberty, it begins at 10 years in girls and 12 years in boys. If you consider the range, in girls it is from a range of 8 to 13 years, and in boys between 9 to 15 years is a range. The first sign of puberty in girls is breast bud development, and the first sign in boys is testicular enlargement, and the mean duration of puberty in both boys and girls is 3 to 3.5 years. There are certain sequential changes which occur in puberty. If you do consider that in an adolescent male, it is early testicular growth, puberty, testicular as well as penile growth, nocturnal emissions, peak in height velocity, voice changes, the development of Adam's apple. Adam's apple is nothing but a prominent cartilage So Adam's apple becomes prominent. Apart from which, there are male pattern of facial hair growth and final pubertal changes also occurring. If you consider the sequential changes of puberty in an adolescent female, there is breast bud development, thelarche, puberche, that is the pubic hair development, peak height velocity, menarche, and final pubertal changes. It is important to note that the onset of peak height velocity is earlier in females than in males of the same age group. Now, coming to the Tanner staging, the staging of it is important because it delineates the current stage of puberty, it assesses the progression, and it can predict the subsequent changes, that is the peak height velocity in SMR2 and SMR3 stages, which I'll come to in next slides. Menarche seen in SMR3 and 4 and gynecomastia in stages 2 and 3. Now, the SMR rating, more or less, if we do consider it as to two key points, one is based on the breast development and one is based on the pubic hair. Up to 15 years, it is normal to have stage 1 with neither present. Thelarche with areolar hyperplasia and small amount of breast tissue in stage 2, and pubic hair of long downy nature and may occur along with the breast budding. This can be seen between 6 to 15 years of age as normal. Coming to SNR3, the breast changes will be further enlargement as well as a further increase in the amount of pubic hair with further pigmentation between age 8 to 15 years. The double contour formation of the breast with areolar and nipple formation with a secondary mount on top of the breast tissue will be seen in SMR4, and pubic hair would be of more or less adult type but not equally distributed, and this is commonly seen between 9 to 17 years of age. Larger adult size distribution of the breast as well as pubic hair is seen between age 10 to 18 years and is the final stage in SMR5. Now, coming to the changes in males, it considers three patterns: testicular changes, penile changes, as well as pubic hair changes. The testicular changes, of course, no change with prepubertal size penis and no pubic hair comes under SMR1. Testicular enlargement with stippling and increased pigmentation of the scrotal sac with minimal or no enlargement and long downy hair is seen between age 10 to 15 as normal in SMR2. Stages 3 and 4 do show subsequent enlargement of both the testis and the penis based on the size, 6 to 8 ml volume for testis and 10 to 12 ml in stage 4. And age is variable and the upper limit is considered as 17 years. It is important to keep in mind that SMR5 is more or less the adult distribution, which is commonly seen between 13 to 18 years of age. Coming to the pubertal disorders, the disorders can be classified into delay as well as precocious, that is early onset. So, a delayed puberty is failure of thelarche by 13 years of age, failure of menarche by 15 years of age in both in females, and a failure of testicular growth by 14 years in males. So, absence of breast buds by 13 years, absence of menarche, that is initiation of the menstrual cycle, by 15 years, or a failure of testicular growth by 14 years in males. Coming to precocious puberty, breast budding, that is thelarche before 8 years of age, menarche before 10 years of age, or testicular growth before 9 years of age in males. So it is easy to recollect as 13, 15 and the number which comes in between 14. In the case of precocious puberty, 8, 10 and the number which comes in between 9. Now, if we want to classify the adolescent period, it is classified into early, middle and late. Early adolescence is between 10 to 13 years of age, which comes under SMR 1 and 2, changes wise. Middle adolescence is between 14 to 16 years of age, which comes under SMR 3 to 4. And late adolescence is almost adulthood, it comes under SMR 5. The changes include physical, psychological and social domains, each of which I'll explain in detail. In early adolescence, the physical changes include breast development in females, enlargement of the testis and nocturnal emission in males, growth spurt, and apart from that, there will be development of pubic hair and axillary hair as well, with increase in pimples and some will manifest with short sight and voice cracking seen in males. Now, the physiological changes which are associated include concrete operational thinking, magical thinking, along with an element of self-consciousness and an interest in the sexual drive in early adolescence. Now, the changes associated in early adolescence in both the genders include seeking independence, and intense peer involvement, and socializing in same-sex peer groups, and role models other than family members commonly seen for the first time. Now, moving on to middle adolescence, the features what you tend to see physically include a height peak, change in the muscle mass, shape in the overall body structure, increase in body odor as well as acne, clear vaginal discharge in females, onset of menarche in females, and facial hair in males, all of which are the physical changes noted. The middle adolescence physiological changes include questioning and critically analyzing extensively, a sense of identity crisis followed by self-centered thinking with an element of abstract thinking. They are self-conscious and worried about their attractiveness and increased daytime drowsiness, and they tend to gauge their own skills and opportunities at school. Now, if you consider the relationship with society, what they consider peer group approval as important. They do tend to go for experimentation, and this is where the risk of social evils and other habits becomes an issue. Apart from that, they do struggle for an autonomy, and the relationship with their parent tends to become stressed, along with an increased interest in the opposite sex by middle adolescents. Now, coming to late adolescence, it's the final stage of growth, by which time they do tend to become idealistic and independent, by which time they also do tend to form affiliations towards certain religious or political groups or other social groups. They understand their rights as adults and responsibilities of adults as well. And it's during this time where they do tend to get involved with sexual intimacy and possible commitments towards their lives. Now, it's important to classify these because it's a normal physiological response. All of these three which we have discussed, early, middle, and late adolescence, it's a physiological process and is normal in everyone. It's important to track the growth and development during these times and to watch for any delay or exaggerated growth, both of which is not good. It's important to know what is the normal and abnormal behavior for that age and to anticipate these issues and ensure counseling is available to prevent high-risk behavior, especially in middle adolescence where the experimentation is at its peak. Parental counseling is also important, for example, mild mood swings are important and are an important issue, in fact, which is brought to a pediatrician. These are normal in early adolescence and require mere counseling alone. It is normal and they do tend to grow out of it. Now, if you consider the factors which affect adolescent development, the socioeconomic condition of the family, the community to which they belong to, the community beliefs what they follow, the family beliefs, and how well the family is involved with the lives of these children do play a role. It's always said that friends play a great role in what the individual does become, so peer group does become important, along with employment issues and educational opportunities which are made available. Now, when we have these factors which affect adolescent development, we can also say that there are certain factors which make an adolescent vulnerable. Now, when I say vulnerable, I mean they are more prone for social evils, they are more prone for health hazards, and they are more prone to become astray. When I say astray, it is away from what is considered to be normal and acceptable for the age in that society. These vulnerable groups do tend to be from poorer backgrounds with poor access to healthcare and education. They are often school dropouts, and this results in juvenile delinquency, meaning they are prone for juvenile crimes. They are often put into the workforce early, and they are often exploited with poor access to education and healthcare, often forced because of a poor socioeconomic status. Street adolescents have a higher chance for high-risk behavior such as substances and other social evils. Now, rural adolescents used to be considered as a vulnerable group because of poor access to healthcare. Now, if you strictly see that one factor has somewhat reduced now because of greater access to social media, as well as a greater access to the healthcare system. And any adolescent who is institutionalized is prone to abuse and exploitation. Now, if you strictly see all of these points together, it forms more or less a chain. And when I say a chain, each one is interlinked to the other. So if one risk factor does tend to appear, it does end up in another risk factor being somewhat involved associated with it. Now, the solution for all of these is poverty eradication, ensuring education for all, strong legislation to ensure that the workforce is maintained strictly above the age of 18, or in certain conditions and certain cases, factories do employ people more than 16 years of age as per the Factories Act. Ensuring there is adequate healthcare which is available to the rural adolescents as well, and to ensure there is no abuse or exploitation for those who are institutionalized. All of these measures are taken at a national level based on policy guidelines, and all of these have contributed in ensuring that the health of adolescents is improved. On that note, I come to the end of this general presentation on adolescent pediatrics. It was more of a sensitizing session towards the scope of adolescence and somewhat of a theoretical aspect as far as the classification of adolescence into early, middle, and late, along with the changes which occur in each age group and what is expected to be normal and what would be considered as abnormal for them. Once again, I thank IAP for making these slides available and for all the efforts which have gone to ensuring the health of children as well as adolescents in our country. I thank you all for your patient listening. Thank you.